Hello, welcome back to Heroes for Sale on Bay TV Liverpool, where we're joined by Tim Quinn today, the mighty Quinn, former editor of Marvel UK magazine, wasn't it, Tim? And we were just discussing how you were entered into that world.
Yeah, all sorts of Marvel comics, both in the States and over here in the UK. Yeah. How did I started with DC Thompson, like a lot of people, up in Dundee, and back then they had lots and lots of weekly comics out. So there was a lot of work, and I worked on the Topper and the Hotspur and Beezer and Dandy and Beano. Bunty, I was the man from Bunty.
And did you have some special duties on the Dandy and Beano? Because, of course, I think they're the ones that quite a lot of people remember.
Yeah, with Corky the Cat, I did pretty regularly and did a few Desperate Dans, and then a character that's long forgotten called Tom Tum. But yeah, it was a lot of fun because it was new and fresh to me, and I was working with some great talents, you know, bumping into some wonderful people who had inspired me to read comics in the first place, you know, as a boy. So it was exciting. How did that work then?
Were you based still in Liverpool? Did you move up to Dundee?
I lived in Dundee for a bit, and so I'd go in and out of the office and bump into various people. Very strange place, DC Thompson. You had to refer to the people who ran it as Mr. Christopher and Mr. Marcus or something. So it was like working in a ladies' hairdresser a bit. Yeah. But, you know, out of that building came some of the most subversive material aimed at children ever, which was great. You know,
yeah, so a great grounding into it. And I think, like I say, loads of people in Britain up until a recent time, would count comics as, oh, right, the Dandy and Beano. Yeah. And it seems like a world removed for you to move on from DC Thompson to work for Marvel. So can you tell us how that came about?
Yeah, that came about. I teamed up with a guy called Dickie Hout, and we started putting work everywhere. We were back then, we're talking now into the 70s, and back then most magazines would run a strip, a little 3-frame strip, and we thought, well, let's get in. You know, if there's a magazine without a strip, we'll provide one. And so we churned out work, tons and tons and tons of it. And then we realized that Marvel comics in the UK, Marvel UK, would be a great area to get into, because they had about 6 weeklies and about 4 monthlies, and it was just reprint material from the States. So
it's got a great sense of humour as well, like the DC Thompson thing. It would translate really well, I'd imagine.
Well, I always thought that certainly Stan Lee's take on the characters always had a great sense of humour about it. But I approached Marvel UK and said, you know, would you be interested in us providing a sort of filler strip between the superheroics? And much to my amazement, yet again, the guy there said, yeah, let's give it a go. Yeah. And worked very, very well for us, because not only were we working for Marvel, but we were working for the other comic publishers in the UK, IPC at that time, Thompson's, and just magazines in general. So there's a lot of work that we were really turning out week after week after week. So
I suppose that's the secret to it, isn't it? If you churn it out, you're getting better and better.
Well, and you're getting a name as well. Yes. And certainly working with Dickie, our style was very recognisable, and it worked. And so
how did you go from that transition to actually becoming an editor at Marvel? Because I know at one point.
Yeah, well, what happened first was I fell in love that time, and moved to the States because I fell in love with an American. Oh, right. And went to live in a place called Indianapolis. And on my first day there, I flicked through the yellow pages to see if there were any publishing companies there. And there was, to my delight, the publishing company that produced the Saturday Evening Post magazine, which is one of the most famous magazines in American history. Benjamin Franklin created it in 1728. And in the last century, lots of illustrators worked on it, and some of the best writers, P.G. Wodehouse, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and so on.
It's quite some pedigree, isn't it?
So you're telling me it was a very sophisticated magazine, and Norman Rockwell did a lot of the covers. So I got an appointment to go in and show my Taddy cartoons to them, because, I mean, my stuff was Beano Dandy kind of stuff, and so it was typical Liverpool chic. And something happened while I was in there, because the publisher who saw me said, where are you from in England? And I said, Liverpool. And that changed everything. She said, you're from Liverpool? I said, yeah. How'd you like to start work on Monday? I'd only gone in to sell a cartoon. Yeah. And I said, well, doing what? And she said, you're supposed to be funny from Liverpool, aren't you? You can be our humour editor. So my first week in America, and I'm offered this position. This position is created for me at one of America's most famous magazines. So that opened every door ever in the States. And it was like, you know, with a single bound, I went from the Beano and Dandy kind of stuff to this astonishing area that I found myself working in. One of the first things I did was to contact Stan Lee to say, Stan, would you like to do some work for the Saturday Evening Post? And of course he said, yeah, because anybody growing up in the States wanted to be in the Post because it was a part of American history. So I got him. Yeah. And as we started talking, it turned out that Stan is one of my heroes. I mean, you know, I love my three heroes are Stan, the Beatles, and Enid Blyton. Enid Blyton, the children's writer. So here I am on the phone talking to my hero from when I was about 6 or 7. And it turned out that he actually knew a strip I was doing at that time back in the UK, because I was still writing the strip for the Daily Mirror called Jane, which had been running since the 30s. And they'd brought it stopped in the late 50s, but it was brought back.
So you had a bit of a mutual appreciation society.
Well, yeah. I mean, my God, Stan Lee knew something that I did. That was great. So I was in with Stan.
And he invited you to write for Marvel?
Well, I stayed at the Post for a few years. It was a very right-wing publication, actually. So it was obvious that my time there would be limited because you can only take so much of that. I mean, I'd be sitting at my desk and walking past my office door one day was Ronald Reagan. And he's like, that doesn't sit well with me. You know? So at one point, I called Stan and said, anything happening in New York? And he said, come and see us. So I was on the next plane, of course.
And with Marvel, you've actually, rather than edit stories, you've written, I think it's X-Men, Spidey and Captain America, to name a few.
I've done lots of stuff for and edited, and I became the head of special projects. And I was flying between the UK and the US and New York, yeah. Because at that point, Marvel UK were finally creating their own stuff and churning out material, lots and lots and lots. So it was a very healthy, wealthy time to be in Marvel. One of the best things that I did was work on the music line, the Marvel music line, where we would bring in pop artists and give them our artists, set them to work with our artists and writers to create something new. So the first guy we did that with was Alice Cooper. And then we worked with the Beatles, the surviving Beatles.
They used to have these team-up magazines, didn't they, where they'd have cultural icons on there, like the Beatles. Isn't there a Marvel?
Well, this was a whole Marvel music line, and it was exciting stuff. Yeah, some of it was good, some of it didn't quite work, but it was a great project to work on. Outside of that, I brought Dirk Maggs in, who was the producer of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Right. And we worked on a BBC radio drama series, 50 episodes, featuring Spider-Man and all the other Marvel characters. That was a blast. We brought Brian May in to do the theme tune for it. Lots of opportunities were created for me by Marvel, or by the fact that I was working within Marvel.
And the other thing I want to talk about, because we are going to run out of time, unfortunately, because you're quite a talker, Tim, as well as a writer, is the fact that you got in trouble for bringing a bit of sauciness to Spider-Man. Isn't there a famous cover?
Yeah, there is. Nobody's seen it. Well, a few people have seen it because I show it. Yeah. We realised that a lot of our audience, you know, were 14 and 15-year-olds, boys. And we were trying to think, now what are 14 and 15-year-old boys like, I wonder? Thinking back. And so we sourced up. At that time, I was working on this strip, Jane, in the Daily Mirror, which was slightly naughty, but nice. And so we put a bit of that into this cover shot of... it showed Spider-Man swinging out of his bedroom window early in the morning, and behind him was his girlfriend, Mary Jane, with the tousled hair and the bed sheets all messed up. And so we thought, with a bit of luck, nobody will notice before it's out there. Some nitwit at Marvel, some nitwit noticed, as you know, there's a few nitwits working there, unfortunately.
They have to employ them, don't they? Because someone's got to.
As soon as you're successful, you're kind of doomed by success. You know, Marvel was a blast to work for. but it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and you got more and more departments within who were non-creative, and you find yourself fighting against that way too often. Yeah.
Great. And the other thing we must mention is that is your book, of course. Please, it's coming
My
out now.
book.
Yes.
It's bigger on the inside, from MIWK Publishing. I was delighted a year ago when the publisher came to me and said he grew up reading my Doctor Who strips in the Marvel magazine, Doctor Who Monthly, and would it be okay if he put them all in one book? So I thought he was nuts, because I didn't think anybody would buy it, but he put this wonderful publication together, hundreds of pages, and for me it's a blast, because you suddenly realise
Doctor Who fans as well, because the satire in there and what some of the humour you have with the Daleks is amazing.
It's taking a fond, humorous look at Doctor Who, because it was a major part of my childhood, Doctor Who, and I love it dearly. And the strips represent that, and it was great to look at. We worked on that for about 15 years, so it's everything we did on Doctor Who is collected in this book, which is out now, and Mork Publishing are a great publisher.
And anybody wants to come and see you in the flesh, of course, you're at Liverpool's Writing on the Wall Festival, which is Saturday, May 15th.
It's me and Charlie Adlard, and I work with Charlie. Charlie's the guy behind The Walking Dead, of course. Yeah. And early in his career, we worked together, and then we worked at Marvel together. So it'd be great to see Charlie again. But that should be a lot of fun. It's at the library, isn't it?
Yeah,
the
Central
Liverpool Library. On the 15th?
Saturday, May the 15th.
Saturday the 15th. Should be a lot of fun. What am I doing there? I have no idea. Stuff.
Okay.
So come and see us.
Go down and see some stuff and meet Tim. It's going to be some kind of workshops and so on. And please join us again later, where Tim will be joining our panel to talk about diversity in comics.
Thanks for watching Heroes for Sale. Did you agree with us? Let us know. Comment below. Also, if you haven't done it already, please subscribe, as we'll be uploading much more geeky awesomeness to come.